Well, hey, good morning, Grace Church. Thanks for letting us join you wherever you are watching this service from today. We love that we get to spend this time together. Even though we're not able to be together this morning, this service is something that we can all watch and do together, and we love that we get to share our time together that way. A couple things I want to make sure that you know, especially if this is maybe your first time checking in with us online, or if you've only been watching for the last couple weeks, I want to let you know about something that's really important at Grace called the Connection Card. It's the best way that we've found that we're able to build a relationship, especially in this online kind of format we're in. So there's two places you can find that. One of those is on our app. If you go to the App Store and search for Grace Ohio, you can find the app there, and there's a connection card there. There's also a connection card on the homepage of our website. So if you go to ellet.gracechurches.org, you'll be able to find the connection card. And we would love to connect with you this week. Maybe you've got something going on in your life that you need prayer for. Maybe there's something big going on that you want somebody to celebrate with. We would love to be that group of people for you, to connect with you, to pray with you, to celebrate with you. Maybe we can grab coffee this week or set up a phone call or find some way to start to get to know you and for you to get to know us. We're here with the band. We're going to start our service off like we always do, or like we love to do, by singing together. These songs are prayers. They're opportunities for us to remind ourselves and to remind each other who God is and what he's done for us. And especially in this kind of format where we're not able to be together, it's awesome to be united in something, to all be singing the same words to God together. So as we kick our morning off, let's sing together. I was buried beneath my shame. Who could carry that kind of weight? It was my turn till I met. Yeah. And I was breathing the night alive. All my failures I tried to hide. It was my turn till I met you. Here's the chorus, come on. You call my name, and I ran out of that grave.
Hey there, so glad to be with you this morning. Ryan here, campus pastor of our Elliott campus, and I'm excited to walk us into the next conversation in this series we just started last weekend. It's called Same But Different. And here's kind of the heartbeat of this series that we just kicked off. If you missed it, or maybe just as a quick refresher here, if you're just jumping in with us, what we said is we're all kind of longing to get back to some level of sameness. Right? Whether or not we're going to be able to do that or not is a different question, but we want to go back to the same. We want to kind of get back to normal. And we said because we're in this situation where everything is disrupted, right? All of our rhythms have been broken up, our normal has been affected. Whenever there's a situation that we're kind of shaken down to our core, it really becomes an opportunity where we can make some changes and we can go back and we can do things differently. Right? On the way back to the same, we want to go back but different. And we want to have a conversation, kind of a series of conversations around that. And we started that just last weekend. And so we kicked it off and we ended up asking the question, we said, if I'm going to go back to same, but I'm going to go back different, I got to get down to a big foundational level question of why do I do what I do? Why do I do what I do? And we landed with that place really last weekend. We said, why don't we just take the week and start to ask that question? Why do I do the things that I do on a kind of an everyday basis? And we wanted to kind of reevaluate and see what are the motivations that drive me, or do I just kind of mindlessly, thoughtlessly roll through life kind of caught up in the normal, and I don't really think that deeply or that often about the purposes and the motivations and the intentionality at which I approach life, right? So we want to go back to the same, we want to do it different. And so all throughout the series, we're going to look at different pieces, like we're going to look at technology, and we're going to look at things like justice a little bit. And this conversation we're going to have today is we want to dive in, and we want to actually have a conversation about wisdom. And we want to have a conversation around our opinions and kind of where our opinions come from. And this one, of course, is on my mind because I don't know if you noticed this or not, but man, there is a major uptick in our culture today on opinion sharing. For whatever reason, we are kind of amped up and we are sharing opinions left and right. And no matter who you are, whether it's on social media or in conversations, there's just a rapid fire of opinion sharing. And when we bump into each other, we're going to kind of hear from each other what we think about what's happening in the world and what's your take on the situation of today. And there's opinions rolling off the tongue left and right. We're posting them on social media. We're saying them to each other. And the opinion sharing load is just multiplying in our day, in our time. And some of that is good, some of it is not so good. And so we want to begin to decipher, where do our opinions actually come from? Why do I actually believe what I believe? And where is wisdom in all of that? Right? So we're kind of going to spend some time going down that road to take a deeper look at where our opinions come from and kind of what's the source underneath them that we might lean into. So if you're somebody who maybe is investigating the faith, I encourage you to stick around in this conversation as we're going to kind of uncover the path that a Christ follower might go down to form a strongly held opinion. If maybe you're a person of faith, I think this will be an encouraging conversation, maybe clarifying for you, as all of us have opinions of all kinds, and maybe it'll be a sharpening time to say, why is it that I actually believe what I believe about that? Where did that opinion actually come from? Is that something that's formed from my faith, or did that come from somewhere else? So want to dive into this, and let me just go ahead and take a minute and define opinion for us. This is kind of a general definition. If you pulled up kind of the dictionary definition, this is the one you get. I think it's a great one. Here's what the dictionary would say about what an opinion is, right? A view or judgment formed about something, not necessarily based on fact or knowledge. Love that, right? Love that. It's just something that I think, right? It's a view, it's a judgment, and we all have them about all kinds of stuff. They are our opinions, right? And a whole bunch of them are fine for us to have. It's a good thing that we have opinions, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not something that God would discourage us from having. And there's a whole bunch of opinions that are kind of the low-level opinions of life, right? It's the stuff that because of my taste and my personality, I might pick this thing over that thing. Let me give you some examples, right? So if you ask me, Ryan, what's the best tool that somebody can use? What's your favorite tool? I would look at you and say, every day of the week, I love using a chainsaw. Love it, right? Love running a chainsaw. It's my favorite. Some of you guys are watching, you're like, yes, I am in agreement with that opinion. Love them. Now, others of you would look back at me and say, man, I could care less about a chainsaw. I've never used one in my life. That's fantastic for you. You might have a different tool that you would use. When I'm thinking about learning and teaching and looking at something that I love to use a whiteboard. Look at that massive whiteboard. That thing is beautiful. I wish that was in my house, right? I could put all of my thoughts onto that thing and it would be amazing, right? You would say, Ryan, I have no interest in whiteboards whatsoever. And I would look at you and say, you're just missing out, man. If only you knew how awesome these were. You might look at me and say, Ryan, what's the best cheeseburger? And I would look at you and say, well, it depends on the day. There's a really close race between Five Guys and Swenson's. Depending on the day, I might switch either way. Those are my opinions, right? And they're both phenomenal, and you might have a different opinion, or you might say cheeseburgers are of the devil, you hate them, whatever. Those are our opinions, and these opinions are mine. They come from my tastes and my preferences and my personality, and that's all fine and good. And you're going to have your opinions about what sports team you love and what food you love to eat and what movies you like to watch and what great music you like to listen to. Awesome. All of that is fine and good. That kind of layer of low-level opinions, we are all completely entitled to. And we all know that there's a next level of opinions that we're going to interact with, and these are the big ones, right? What do you think about things like what kind of situation we're in the world today? What do you think about things like justice? What do you think about God? What do you think the person, kind of the purpose of life is? Who do you think Jesus is? What do you think about the Bible? Those are some really big questions. And those opinions have serious ramifications for our lives and really for the people around us, because they're the questions that we answer with our opinions about what we think really, really matters in our day, in our time, and in our time here on the planet. Those opinions are the ones we really want to dial in and focus on today, because those opinions have to come from somewhere, maybe through our observation, maybe from our faith, maybe from something we learned in school, but ultimately there's going to be a source that comes behind those opinions, and I want to make sure that I approach those carefully. I love this passage, James talking to a series of churches he's reaching out to in this book of the Bible. He gives us great general wisdom. He says, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry." This is a phenomenal verse for us to start with when we're just thinking about how do we form our opinions, and how do we, maybe more importantly, how do we evaluate the opinions of others? I want to be someone who is quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And especially in the realm of opinion sharing, sometimes we can get angry at someone else's opinion. Or sometimes we get angry when somebody doesn't agree with our opinion about something. And so wisdom would tell us that I should be somebody who is a little bit slow about speaking, about putting my opinion out there, and I should definitely be quick to understand, right? Slow to become angry. And there's some really good reasons for this, and we're going to look at a few great proverbs from ancient wisdom that Solomon, one of the wisest man on earth, at least at his time, would have captured some of these thoughts. Here's what he says. He says in Proverbs 18:13, to answer before listening, that is folly and shame. Man, that's good, right? To answer before listening, that is folly and shame. So what he's saying is, before I would jump in and give a reply, before I give an opinion about a situation, first what I should do is listen and try to understand what's happening in that situation. Because to just jump in and answer or reply before listening, that's going to make me look like a fool. That's going to be a thing of folly, is the idea, kind of a word we don't use that much. I'm going to look like a fool. It's going to be shameful to me to respond, kind of go off kind of half-cocked when I don't really understand what's happening. That leads to folly and shame. Now, what's interesting in our culture today is this often isn't seen. In our world, it's pretty normal not to be somebody who listens before answering, but somebody who just kind of is the first and the loudest to speak up and throw our opinion out there. And the Bible would say that is a place of folly and shame. I don't want to be there myself. I don't think you do either. We don't want to be in the situation where we are just kind of spewing responses when I don't actually understand the situation that I'm interacting with. Be quick to listen, slow to speak. I want to try to understand before diving in and trying to give a presumptive answer, a confident assertion, a strong opinion about something, frankly, I don't know anything about. Interesting idea. He goes on to the next one. He says, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but they delight in airing their own opinions. So he's saying foolish people. In the Proverbs, often you have somebody who's considered a fool and somebody who's wise. The fool, he says, does not enjoy or take any pleasure in trying to learn, in humbling themselves to be taught and to understand a situation so that they might aptly answer and have a kind of a rounded out opinion, well-informed opinion about something. He says what they do is they delight, what they love to do is hear their own voice. They love to spout their own opinions, to share those, airing them frequently. And that is definitely the case in our world today. And we don't want to be found in that camp. We don't want to be the people that are just throwing opinions out there, kind of not understanding a situation. We don't want to be sharing fake news, sharing information that we don't even know if it's accurate or not, repeating information that we don't even know if it's accurate or not. We want to be people who find pleasure in understanding, because that's the camp of the wise, right? It's the wise person who slows down, listens, hears, understands, and practices self-control to not quickly jump in and air an opinion or repeat an opinion that they're not even really sure they have their head around. Super important principle. And while none of us want to think of ourselves as foolish, all of us kind of think that we are coming from a place of wisdom, I think, when we interact with a subject like this. What we want to do is look at what is wisdom, where does it come from, and what wisdom are we acting on when we think about how our opinions are formed. And the Bible is going to talk about a couple different kinds of wisdom. James, in fact, talks about two kinds in a short passage in his book of the Bible in chapter 3. Here's what he says. He says, "Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts," he says, "don't boast about it and don't deny the truth about it." Right? So here's the idea. He's asking the question, who's wise and understanding among you? Who's the wise person? That person is gonna really, their wisdom shows up in their life in doing good deeds, and all of that is in humility, right? He says, if you have envy and selfish ambition if really my opinions and my lifestyle are coming from envy, that I want what that group has, or I want to be first in a culture where everybody wants something that someone else has, and everybody wants to be number one on kind of the list, what that ends up creating is absolute chaos, right? That is a wisdom that is not from God. Here's what he goes on to say. He says, such wisdom does not come from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual. He even says demonic. He says that this is the kind of wisdom that's actually influenced by the evil one. Why? Because if I get caught up in the worldly system, in the worldly thought process that we talked about a little bit last week of trying to become number one, and I want to jump in on the bandwagon that's actually driven by envy, driven by selfish ambition, then I'm going to be pulled away from the other kind of wisdom that is the kind of wisdom that's actually from God, right? He says, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice, right? So all we have to do is kind of look around at our world and see disorder, see every evil practice, and say that, see, that's the wisdom that I don't want to form my opinions from. That's the wisdom I don't want to base my life on. How do I go back different? How do I find a different wisdom that is disconnected from that kind of train of thought? That's a kind of wisdom that's not earthly or unspiritual or demonic, right? It's a different one. It's from above, is what James would say. Here's what he says. He says, the wisdom that comes from heaven or comes from above is, listen to this list, first of all, pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. He says, peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. He's going to say, here's kind of the other kind of wisdom that we might run into. This is the wisdom that we could really build some great opinions from. He says that this kind of wisdom is pure and it's peace-loving. It isn't trying to create division. This kind of wisdom isn't trying to separate people so that I can be on top. That this kind of wisdom is considerate of others, loves people, and is considering kind of their situation, and isn't reckless, it isn't ruthless. It's even sometimes submissive. It's submissive, of course, to God, and sometimes we submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. It's full of mercy. It cares about things like justice. It cares about taking care of the poor. It cares about other people, right? It's impartial and sincere. That's the kind of wisdom that God gives. That's the kind of wisdom that's from heaven. If we looked at the two, this kind of wisdom really drives and tries to amplify me. This is about me. I want what they have, envy. I want to be number one, selfish ambition. The wisdom from above is about being outward focused, right? This is how God operates. He's operating from a place where he loves peace, operating from a place of purity, concerned about mercy, concerned about being impartial, right? There's a sincerity to it. That's the kind of wisdom that we want our opinions to be formed from, right? Very, very different than the kind of wisdom that we just looked at. And here's the thing, all of us, whether we realize it or not, have this source that our wisdom is coming from. And I want to take the time, and I want to take the opportunity to start to ask the question, where is this opinion in my life coming from? How do I get this wisdom? And that might be the question even you're asking today, is kind of where does this whole thing access from? And here's where I would lead us. And the next passage we want to look at is in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. Solomon, again, here's what he says. He says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Here Solomon says this. He says that this is where wisdom begins. Here's kind of the gateway into wisdom. And what he's going to describe it as is the fear of the Lord. Now, I realize as I say that phrase, that you may be receiving that in all kinds of ways. If you have maybe a background from growing up in church and you heard about fire and brimstone and God is mad at you, you're going to get struck by lightning, that's why you don't want to go to a church anymore. That's not the kind of fear of the Lord we're talking about. Maybe you are like me, didn't grow up in church, and this whole idea is a foreign idea. What does fear of the Lord even mean? How does it work, and how does it play? Let me give you some examples here of what we mean by fear. When I was back in college, it's kind of hilarious when I think about it now. I applied for this part-time job on one of my Christmas breaks, and what I found I was going to do is I was going to sell knives for a couple weeks to make some money for college, right? And so I ended up doing this. I actually sold knives in college. I ended up doing it for a couple of years. It's hilarious. The whole business model is that you would sell these kitchen knives that were absolutely unbelievable, super sharp, amazing tools. And what you would do is you would talk to somebody about their kitchen knives and kind of show them what they were all about. And then they would give you referrals, and then you would actually go to other people's houses that you'd never met before with a bag full of sharp knives, and then you would take those knives into their home and teach them about the knives, and then they would buy them. Now, the whole business model was kind of built that way, and I did this for a couple of years. It's crazy even now to think about it. One of the reasons it was so easy to sell the knives, I could sell them today, is they were absolutely fantastic, and they were super sharp. And one of the things I had to learn right away when I started selling knives, and they were huge, right? Some of them were 9-inch blades, huge, massive tools. I had to learn how to respect and to have a healthy fear of the knife, right? Because I cut myself right away just using them because they're so sharp. And what I learned was, when I learned how to interact with the knife properly, with respect, and with a healthy fear, I know the knife's not going to come and get me, but I need to interact with that thing carefully and make sure to slow down and not to go too fast with it, and to make sure to take precautions, because this is a thing that needs to be respected. When I interacted with it appropriately, with the right amount of respect and fear, then I could interact with it wisely, and I could use it the proper way. And that's really exactly how we're talking about our interaction and our fear of the Lord. Here's how I would describe it. Fear of the Lord is a sense of respect, awe, and submission to God. I'm going to have wisdom in life when I begin by recognizing who God is, His power and His place in my life, and as soon as I interact with Him according to who He is, now I can enter into kind of that gateway of wisdom, right? Because I realize I'm not the authority. My thoughts and my preferences and my tastes, they're not king. There's a God up here who exists, who deserves to be feared and respected. He's not going to go off the handle. It's not none of that, right? He's not going to just strike us with lightning. He's a loving, he's a God who is worthy to be trusted with our lives, but He has all power in heaven and on earth. He's someone that should be revered because He is so awesome and so almighty and all-powerful. When I recognize who that God is and see that God loves me, I can begin to put myself in a rightful place, and now, as I interact with God appropriately, I can begin to have wisdom. That's when it all begins. Right? And that's even what the verse says, that knowledge of the Holy One, that's where understanding starts to come from. Until I get that right, I might be the authority in my life. Someone else might be that doctor or that professor or that government or that philosopher. Any of those might be just another human being might be the one that I revere and fear and respect, and their opinions, their thoughts, may be what governs my life. I've only been on the planet a little while. I imagine that's true for you too, no matter how old you are. None of that could possibly compare to an eternal God that has created heaven and earth, who splits the sea, raises the dead, heals the leper, can create out of nothing. That is a God who can be feared. And now I can begin to put myself into a place where I am ready, as I fear God, to hear His words appropriately. I can recognize, oh wow, God has spoken to me through the Bible. And now, when I'm looking to form my opinions, what happens is the things that God say are much higher weighted than things that someone else says or things even that I think. Because at the end of the day, all of us as human beings have to choose this. What is going to be the authority in my life? Am I the authority, really? My handful of years on the planet, I know what's best. Another human being who's in the same place, a philosopher, a wise person. How am I going to make a decision about who's going to have that place of authority in my life that really helps me anchor in my deeply held opinions, helps anchor me in to what I would call conviction, when I take my opinion and form it with my faith and kind of base and build my life on those things. And here's what I would call a conviction, a conclusion based on my faith. When my opinions are that higher level opinion, that really it's something that anchors and drives my life. It's what I believe about God and life and the value of human life and things about justice and mercy. What do I think about how I would approach my money and how I would approach my time? I want all that to come not just from my opinion, which could just change on a dime. I want that to come from a deeply rooted place of conviction based on what the God of the universe has said to me. And I want to understand that is by faith because I have a reverence, a fear, and awe of the one who has spoken. And I want to go back here and find out, God, what did you say about that? This is kind of how it worked for me. When I came to know Jesus, I had a lot of strong opinions about all kinds of things. And when I began to understand this and experience a little bit of this fear of the Lord, right, reverence for God, I started to realize, wait a minute, all these strongly held opinions that I have, forget all that. I don't want to hold on to those so tightly because I've discovered someone who is far wiser than me, who knows far more, who can see the beginning from the end. I don't know what I think about that yet until I hear what God has to say. And when I hear what He has to say, that's where my conviction is going to land because I want to live from a place of faith. I don't want to live from a place of Ryan thinks this is best because I can't even trust my own senses. I want to dive in deep and understand what has God said to me, and I want to put my faith there as the source of my authority, the source of my convictions. It's where I want my opinions to be birthed from. And you might be listening to this today and say, oh, that's fantastic, Ryan, that you found that. Maybe you don't have a faith background yet. I get that. I've been there as well. And what I would encourage you to realize and acknowledge is that you believe something, and that whatever it is that you believe, it's coming from somewhere. And so what we want to do is figure out, should really that be my source of authority for life? That I'm going to build my life and my opinions and convictions from that source. And for those of us who are followers of Jesus, this matters just as much. Because here's the tough part. I'm just going to say some things that may be a little bit tough to receive. The reality is this, that for most of us, faith or no faith, at the end of the day, most of us don't actually know why we believe what we believe about the things we believe about. That's tough to receive, but it's true. If if I really pushed on you and asked you the question, why do you, show me in the Bible, or show me the source of what it is you believe, and where did that come from? Would you have a grasp on that, and would I have a grasp on that? And that's what we want to go back different in. I want to be a person that becomes unshakable in my convictions, because I know that I know that I know, because I fear God, and here's where He said it. And while I'll always be growing in my understanding of what God has spoken, I can land in a place because it's clear, because God has made it clear. He has spoken through His Word, and I want to land there and hear Him. And man, if you don't have a place to land, I remember feeling like this. As an atheist, I felt like everything that I believe in can just evaporate in a minute, because there's no strength to that source. I would test a theory that I had and see if it worked. And when it didn't work, when it didn't hold water, I feel like I was starting all over again, trying another one. That's why I didn't believe in things like marriage before I was a follower of Christ. Why? I'd never seen it work. Until I had an anchor for the things that I believed, I was untethered, and I would just listen to a philosopher or an idea or a thought or a self-help book, but there was no root, no source, no bedrock to the convictions that I held. And so we want to be in a place where those convictions are solid, right? That we can rely on those, we can build on the rock that will never fail, and we can know we always can land there. Here's kind of my fear in this time, right? As we look to go back to the same, and things are not all that we want them to be, my fear is this, that during this time of chaos and tumultuousness, and right where everything is a little bit different and it's a little strange, 2020 is some kind of year. With all of that stress, what's coming out of our culture, and I think what's coming out of us sometimes, are a whole lot of opinions. Here's my fear. My fear is that the world around us would look at followers of Christ, and if they hear us, and if you're watching today, and you're not a follower of Christ, you're going to resonate with this. If you see followers of Jesus spouting out opinions that are not fact-based, that are half-baked, strongly held opinions that have no bearing whatsoever from a place of faith, that we're going to become known for the wrong things. We're going to become known for our strongly held opinions and judgmentalism, rather than being known for a healthy reverence for God, for humility, for being quick to listen, to being slow to speak, to being quick to love other people, and to be quick to sacrifice for others out of love for them. We have an opportunity right now to change that. We don't have to go back to a place where we are known for being judgmental and being hypocritical and being opinionated and giving unsolicited advice. We can go back and be different. We can operate out of a place of wisdom, operate out of a place of humility, where we're quick to listen and slow to speak, and where we're on a journey to understand God, who we have a healthy respect for. God, what have you said about that? And Ryan, when people are asking me, what do you think about that? Sometimes I'll say, I don't know what I think about it yet. I need to understand more of God's heart about this before I draw a conclusion about my faith and form a conviction that way. Here's what happens. As I start to understand God's heart and His mind more and more, I have a healthier fear for Him. What happens is I start to build an accurate picture of who He is. Here's the thing, that accurate picture of who God is will alter what I believe, what I say, and how I live. It's going to change my convictions. It's going to change the weight of my opinions. It's going to cause me to land in a different place where I change kind of what I say and when I say it and how I say it, because that's all going to be filtered through wisdom, through peace-loving, through purity, through being full of mercy and good fruit. Not out of selfish ambition, not out of anger, not out of rage, not out of envy. I want to land in a place where I'm seeing who God is more and more, and I'm clear about the things that He has spoken so that I can land in a place that brings more and more glory and honor to Him. This is what we want to begin to do, is ask the question, why do I believe what I believe? And where did that belief come from? What kind of wisdom is that built off of? And I want to have a commitment to going back different. I want to make sure as I engage my world and in conversation that the things I'm holding on to strongly aren't just my own ideas. They're the heart and the passion, the mind of God. I want to make sure of that. Double click on it, double check it. Because I'm representing His heart and His mind in the world. If you're a follower of Jesus, this is big deal stuff. Right? That we would anchor around the right things. And if you're not a follower of Jesus, let me just say this. I'm sorry for the times that you have interacted with followers of Jesus and we've been strong about the wrong stuff. About the things that aren't even connected to God's heart. For when we shared misinformation or misrepresented kind of who God is and how He functions. What really matters is that you know this God who loves you, who has all the power in heaven and on earth to change your life as He's continuing to change my life. And I want you to know that He's the one that sent His Son to lay down His life for you and for me. And that conviction for me is where my entire life is placed. It's changed me from the inside out. And I promise it will change you as well. At the end of the day, that's what I know the most. That Jesus is real, that He loves you, that He sacrificed Himself for you, and that you can find life and truth and hope and a solid foundation underneath all of what you believe in Him. Would you consider that today? As we sing and we worship, would you ask yourself those questions? Would you pray with me? Let's do that together. Father, we say thank you today that we are not left to our own thoughts and opinions to navigate this life. Because God, I am a limited, finite human being with a very small perspective, all things considered. But Lord, you see all things and you know all facts and you are eternal. There's no end to your glory. God, you know more than all scholars and have more information than every degree. You see the beginning from the end, and there's nothing that can defeat you. And so, Lord, we choose today to stand in awe of you, who you are and how you love and how you can change us from the inside out. Lord, help us with this. Help us to have humility and to find where our bedrock convictions come from and to cling to those most. It's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
You overnight down. I'll sing in the night, my hope alive in you. I'll walk through the fire and not be burned. Pray in the fight and watch it turn. Jesus, tonight I give it all to you. I won't let the storm weather my heart. Won't let the darkness beat me down. I'll sing in the night, my hope alive in you. I'll walk through the fire and not be burned. Pray in the fight and watch it turn. Jesus, tonight I give it all to you. I won't let the fire burn my heart. Won't let the darkness beat me down. Sing in the night, my hope alive in you. I'll walk through the fire and not be burned. Pray in the fight and watch it turn. Jesus, tonight I give it all to you. Even when the world breaks, even when the fight goes, even when the wars rage, I'll take my heart. I know you are greater, ever you are Savior. I will sing your praise with all that I have, with all that I have, with all that I have, with all Awesome. We love that we get to sing together. Thanks for being with us. Hope we get to see you soon. See you guys.